Once upon a time, I was a wee child, and much like other V.C. Andrews readers, I happened upon one of her books, despite there being more adult content. I was intrigued, if not maybe a little bit confused, and proceeded to move on with my life and basically forget I had ever read it and forget that it existed. Flash forward to now. I'm me now.
Hi.
And I recently was scrounging the depths of my mind, trying to remember any interesting books I've read for a possible new video. Thank you. That's when I got a flash of a memory. A girl discovering a pair of fraternal twins swimming naked in a lake. That's about it. All I could remember was that she lived like a really sheltered life with her really religious grandmother, and that the twins were kind of weirdly touchy. Like, that's where my mind took me. It was like in the deep recesses of my mind. Like, I really was working with not a lot, but it was there. I was like, this had to have been real. Like, I remember reading this book, even though I don't remember the title, I don't remember the author, but I just got the flash of a memory of it. So I didn't have a lot to work with. In addition to that small and vague memory of this book, I could recall that it was by an author that my mother had recommended, or at least like when she saw that I was reading it, she praised said author. So thank you, Mother, for so diligently monitoring the content I was reading. I began searching desperately for this book. I barely even remembered like a significant plot, let alone a title or an author. I hit a dead end. I was doing that thing where you Google like hyper-specific details about a book or a movie just to try to find it, even though you don't know like the title or anything about it, with just like slight variations, hoping divine intervention would hit and deliver me the answer. I even consulted Reddit to no avail. Nothing. Zilch. Nada. So I was left with no choice but to consult the only other person in this memory that might have any inclination on what the fuck I was talking about. My mother. To preface, I love my mom, but she has a terrible memory. So I didn't go into this conversation with high hopes. I'm not lying when I tell you that the first book my mother thought to recommend was The Host by Stephanie Myers. And if you have, no idea what I'm talking about, I only like a few weeks ago uploaded an almost 5-hour long video analysis about this book. My mother was none the wiser because she doesn't know that I have this channel and she doesn't know that I just read that book, but I just thought the fact that she so innocently recommended that, like, saying like, oh yeah, I remember this book. And I think they made a movie about it. You'd probably like it.
But you're 17, Melanie, and I'm 26.
So I just spent so many hours reading this book and like editing and making a 5-hour long video about it. Unrelated, but I just had to add that in here because what are the fucking odds? I just had to play it cool because honestly I was on a mission and there was no time to get into that. So we brainstormed some more and I'm kind of given up at this point because like I didn't even know if the book that I barely remembered, like if it was even gonna be like worth it. I didn't even know if it would warrant a video or like be interesting enough to make anything out of it. So I was ready just to let the Reddit post collect spiderwebs and move on with my life. That was until my mother came into fucking clutch. She gave me the name V.C. Andrews, and it sounded familiar, but I wasn't sure why. Sure enough, I knew V.C. Andrews. I had recently just been quite invested in a video essay series that fellow YouTuber Coriban, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, Coriban Alumni Books uploaded about one of her book series recently. Give it a watch. It's a great plot analysis. But in their video essays, they covered the first 3 books in the Ganger series, which the first one being Flowers in the Attic, which I feel like is V.C. Andrews' most prolific title, like very recognizable. They made movies about it.
Based on the bestsellers that have shocked 40 million readers worldwide. Flowers in the Attic.
And I actually had seen the first movie like years and years ago. So even though I'd never read the book, I saw the movie and I love book video essays. That's why I'm I like to make them. So yeah, I watched their video series about it and I thought it was super interesting. So that's why the name sounded familiar to me. But I had no idea that I had actually read one of her books years ago when I was a kid. So yeah, their videos were my main education that I had gotten about the V.C. Andrews series. So after I realized that, I looked up V.C. Andrews' bibliography and was a bit caught off guard by the sheer mass of it. But I didn't think much of it at that time. I don't know, I just wanted to find the one book that I had read when I was a kid. And there it was. The book that I had been so desperately searching for was called The Unwelcomed Child. It's actually a standalone novel, which is unusual in this grand scheme of V.C. Andrews' bibliography. There's lots of series. There's not a lot of just like standalone books. Before we get into that, I think we have a lot more to talk about. You see, I kind of fell into a rabbit hole. This video wasn't going to be so cut and dry as I thought it was going to be. It wasn't just going to be a read the book and talk about it kind of deal, which is fine, but you need to know what you're getting yourself into. The Unwelcomed Child was released in 2014, so I was like in middle school when I read it. But interestingly, V.C. Andrews actually passed in 1986. And you might be wondering, well, how the hell did she write it then if she's dead? And I'm sure the title of the video has already given away what I'm so elegantly leading up to, but V.C. Andrews has been ghostwritten for the last 40 years. First, I wanted to give like a little overview of V.C. Andrews' life so you can kind of understand the roots, why her books became so popular, who she was, and how did this happen? V.C. Andrews was born in 1923. She had fallen down a stairwell and had an accident which left her wheelchair bound for the rest of her life. A life that she spent mainly indoors being cared for by her mother while writing her first 8-ish books. That was until, like I said, she ended up passing in 1986 at 63 years old. So you have to put yourself back in that time. She was writing and releasing her most popular novels in the 1980s. The books that she was releasing at the time were seen as risque and unheard of. They covered topics that were taboo, to say the least, and stories of tragic families, children under duress, that brought forth fantastic publicity and earned her the title of being a world-famous author, with books that would still be discussed decades later. If you know anything about the books that V.C. Andrews wrote, like Flowers in the Attic, then you would understand when I say that V.C. Andrews' life was described as not so different from the character she wrote about being locked away in an attic. She was very sheltered and pretty much stayed inside a lot of the time, just writing these books. There was an interview with Andrews that was published in 1985 where Andrews details that when she wrote Flowers in the Attics, the main character, Kathy, who was trapped in an attic for several years, she says, "All of Kathy's feelings about being in a prison were my feelings, so when I read them now, I cry." She put a lot of her own feelings into Flowers in the Attic, and it became an extremely popular and well-loved book, which led her to continue to write the sequels to this series. Flowers in the Attic was a cultural phenomenon. When it was released, millions of copies were sold. Even though it wasn't originally sold as a young adult novel, it was most popularized by young adults, and so many were awestruck by the content. Some felt as though this book aired out like toxic families, abusive families, and feelings that people so rarely saw vocalized in media at the time. Others read it just out of morbid curiosity, but either way, it was extremely popular and is still talked about to this day. So only 4 days after Andrew's passing, a memo was actually prepared for the publishing staff that published her novels, saying that there were more books remaining to be published and that despite the author herself passing, they would be released. Virginia Andrews was actually in the midst of writing 2 more manuscripts at the time of her passing, and this isn't completely unheard of with unfinished manuscripts and such in the publishing world, but they brought in a ghostwriter in order to finish a manuscript that she was unable to before she passed, and they wanted to bring someone in with a similar writing style or someone who could mimic her writing very well. That being said, there are over 90 books under V.C. Andrews' name. 97 to be exact. I found 89 books between all of the series under her name, with only 8 standalone novels as the cherry on top. The reason I say under her name rather than written by V.C. Andrews is because less than 8% of her novels in her bibliography are actually her writing. The ghostwriter they ended up finding was an author under the same agent as Andrews, and did the job of finishing these 2 manuscripts before proceeding to write 90 more under her name. Andrew Niederman is the author that they ended up hiring. His first name is Andrew, and I refer to V.C. Andrews sometimes as Andrews. So I'm just gonna call him Niederman to make it a little less confusing. Hope I'm pronouncing it right. I'm sorry, but I'm getting a little distracted, but in the BuzzFeed interview that I found a lot of the information regarding Niederman, and I found this little tidbit that was a little, sorry. I found this little tidbit about Niederman's career being a high school teacher, and he says, like, his current wife was previously one of his students. Ew! And then his wife chimes in saying that, like, he would have been brought up on charges if it was in current day. Sorry? Do we just have to breeze past that? Huh? He's even quoted saying, like, we were a secret romance. But yeah, they've been together for 50 years now, so I don't think there's much we can do in that department. We're just gonna have to move on. So the whole time I'm doing research, I'm thinking, who made this decision? Like, I just really want to know. Like, one of my main questions was, did V.C. Andrews herself, like, consent to this? Like, was she okay with her name being used, or was it completely out of her hands? Unfortunately, the information I could find was pretty vague, since it's, like, a lot of legal matters. And it said almost nothing about Andrews herself wants after her passing. It said that Virginia did read one of Niederman's novels, and according to Virginia's sister-in-law, she liked his writing style, but, like, that's literally the closest I could find to her being, like, okay with him writing for her. And even then, it doesn't, like, explicitly say, like, that she chose him and, like, wanted him to, like, take over her legacy. Like, that's the only thing I could find, so. And apparently Andrew's estate is run by her brothers, and they're the ones that went on to hire Niederman. So her sister-in-law, Joan Andrews, is then said to say that we were delighted that her legacy would carry on since she was so determined to make a difference in this world. I personally am not so sure about them wanting to carry on her legacy that much. Of course, I wasn't there, and I don't know. And I don't know Andrews or her family, but I can't help but feel kind of yucky about the whole thing. Like, it kind of just comes across as, at face value at least, a little money hungry to me. Treating her name like a trademark or just like a cash grab. And like I said, ghostwriters after death isn't unheard of. It's a thing. Like, other example that I've seen, you know, Nancy Drew books are not written by one person. Like, it's just a bunch of other authors written under, like, one pen name, but then, like, that still feels different to me because, like, I've never seen it taken this far, in which Niederman has been the sole ghostwriter of V.C. Andrews for over 20 years. Like, and in the past 2 decades, like, they've published almost 100 books under her name. I don't think it's about legacy, or passion even. It's the money. Because, from what I've seen, Niederman is kind of just shitting out and copy and pasting some, like, similar books with the similar themes, because that's what made Andrews popular in the first place. And that's what they know makes money. And that's what brings me to...
People, focus, please.
Into the arms of a man whose veins pulsed with the same blood as hers. Not a stranger, but her own uncle.
V.C. Andrews' books all follow a common theme. The plots blend together a little bit, especially with there being 27 series under her name. Now, I personally have not read all of these series, and I don't plan on it unless this really strikes your fancy and you would like to watch me suffer in doing some deep dives on them. But I digress. I will, however, give you a brief synopsis of a few of the series just so you kind of get the idea of it. We'll start with the first, written by V.C. Andrews herself. At least the first 7 of the 9 were for the Dollenganger series, aka Flowers in the Attic. I again recommend Coriban's series, but here is my extremely condensed version. Flowers in the Attic follows 4 children who are locked away in the attic of their wealthy grandparents after the passing of their father. The story goes to explore like the family secrets, the betrayal, and the psychological impact of abuse and confinement. Thank you, AI overview. But yeah, the children end up being stuck in the attic and being abused by their grandmother and neglected and ignored by their mother, who is allowing for this to happen. The mother says like that she's going to earn back her name in her father's will because previously she was kind of exiled from her family because she went off and married her uncle. So that is the first case of incest that we see in this book, and the Flowers in the Attic is kind of known for its, like I said, taboo themes. The oldest children of the 4 end up having an incestual relationship as a result of the abuse and like psychological shit that they endure while being locked away in this attic and what happens after. I think the way that V.C. Andrews wrote Flowers in the Attic can be seen as like not just trashy entertainment like I see a lot of people say. Like, I actually do think that her writing, from what I've seen in this book and the way that she tells the story, is a little thought-provoking. It's interesting seeing what the children go through and the like effects of the trauma that they endure. But that's where my praise ends, because henceforth these books are no longer written by V.C. Andrews, and that's where we see a common theme being churned out over and over again. So yeah, the rest of the series, I myself do not have any personal knowledge on, so I'm literally just like reading off a few of the blurbs I found. There's the Castile series, which follows Heaven Lee Castile through her teen years, who tries to rise above her impoverished background to find love and happiness. She struggles to redeem her family name and escape her domineering father, Luke. Luke is a terrible father. He gets drunk and mistakes Heaven for her mother and essays her. Some of the other highlights that I found were that the children were sold off to different families. The family she was sent to abuses her, and she's taken advantage of by the husband, who had become sort of like a father figure to her. So there's like a little more of the incesty stuff in this funny synopsis that I found. Just keep all that in mind as we move on to... There's the Cutler series, which follows Dawn Longchamp in her early teen years as she struggles to fit into high-class society. She shares a pull-out couch with her brother, and her brother also... She also catches her brother, like, watching her change, and their dynamic is weird. So I don't know if you've noticed a trend there. As I was looking into these series, I actually ended up coming across some like-minded people who have also seen and noticed this trend in V.C. Andrews' books. I even found a lovely website that like straight out like details the V.C. Andrews plot formula for trashy fiction success. So that's nice. And that's like exactly what I'm getting at. So at this point, where does the book I read fall into this? The lovely formula is said to contain an innocent and pretty, yet completely naive female protagonist, a tragic death, a rags to riches plot, a vivid gothic setting, a beloved doting paternal figure, a hostile maternal figure, plus bonus mean girl, some good old school misogyny, incest, exclamation point, some really bad writing, and some fantastic psychological horror. Yeah, where does my book fall into all of that?
Oh, my gerbs! Jake! Let's help these candy orphans! Hey, kids!
So much like all of the other V.C. Andrews novels, the standalone book that I read follows much of the same formula that we've just explored. And since I actually went through the effort of rereading this one entirely, you must now suffer through a plot summary detailing said formula with me. Let's begin. I'll give you the good old blurb off the back of the book. Elle Edwards, who has been told she was a product of her mother's sinful mistake, has never gone to school, never met a teenager her own age, never been allowed off her grandparents' property. Convinced that their granddaughter is infected with evil, Myra and Prescott Edwards believe that the only harshest child-rearing methods will prevent Elle from becoming an instrument of the devil. When Elle's mother finally returns home and tells a different story of her daughter's conception, Elle worries her grandparents are right, but with the help of a handsome boy vacationing nearby, Elle is finally about to discover the truth of her past and learns the truth about her conception and struggles with profound feelings of insecurity while pursuing a relationship with a vacationing boy. So yeah, that's the summary you'll get off the back of the book, but allow me to get more real with you. This summary misses the important plot point where the twins Elle meets are actually really fucking weird and touchy with each other for no reason. I even highlighted all the main incidents of the incest so we can live through it together. In the formula that we've gone over, I, after reading this book, would say the ones that this book tacks off would be the innocent and pretty, yet completely naive protagonist, check. A hostile maternal figure, check. Some good old school misogyny, check. Incest, check. Some kind of bad writing, check. I honestly, I don't know. I know that Flowers in the Attic had some, like, religious trauma in it, and, like, the grandmother in that book also would, like, call the children the devil and, like, project all this, like, religious shit onto them. I don't know if that's just, like, this book that I read and Flowers in the Attic having coincidentally that plot point, or if, like, a lot of V.C. Andrews' books has the religious trauma, but I would add that to my checklist. This one is a little different because it is, like, one of the few standalone books, like I said, in the catalog of V.C. Andrews series, but that being said, it still follows a lot of the formula that we love and know so well. My review of this book, I'm gonna keep it brief because that's not really the point of this video, but I do just, like, since I, like, suffered through it, I want you to understand what I went through, but I would give it maybe, like, a 3 out of 5. I don't know, because this book was entirely written by Andrew Niederman, and something about that, like, makes me like it less. I don't know, like, just, like, the fact that it was written under V.C. Andrews' name, and I will give it to him that, like, the way he depicts some of the religious trauma that Elle endures is nice. I like that he doesn't just brush over that. But I highlighted some quotes regarding Elle's trauma because Elle begins to, like, throughout the book, after being raised in this household, she struggles with self-confidence, she struggles with her self-image, she can't help but, like, after you're being told that you're, like, evil and have Satan in you over and over again, that's gonna fuck with you in your developmental years. She also has sexual thoughts subdued, so there's lots of sexual repression. I feel like my main takeaway from this book, honestly, even while I'm, like, trying to praise some of it or give it some good points, like, right now, I feel like my main takeaway from this book is just the weird siblings, because that was never really addressed, and, like, now I have to address it. Let me paint the picture for you, because who gives a shit about this book? All you have to know is that Elle is extremely sheltered. She's being raised by her grandparents, who are extremely religious and think that she was, like, sinful. At this point of the book, Elle is 14, just turning 15. So we have, like, it once again being, like, a young teen. And she, for the first time, is being allowed to go walk into the woods and to, like, go visit the lake to do some art because, like I said, she's so sheltered. Her grandparents, her grandma mostly, like, never lets her out of the house. Never, like, she's homeschooled. She's just, like, has never even, like, interacted with a kid her own age. But they're not loosening the reins, but they're, like, her grandfather is kind of trying to push her grandmother to allow her to, like, live a little more. And by live, yeah, go to the lake and draw, do some doodling. Oh, I forgot to say, actually, for her 15th birthday, her grandfather encouraged them to go to a restaurant for dinner to celebrate her 15th birthday, which they've never done because they are shitty people, and so they've literally never celebrated Elle's birthday or anything, because what's there to celebrate when you are raising a child you don't even want? So they go to this restaurant, and at this restaurant, this is when we see one of the twins for the first time, Mason. And I'm just mentioning this because at his first introduction, she describes him as looking 18 or 19. So I was immediately like, he better not be with her just turning 15. Like, just turning 15. We're safe, though. We're safe. Like, they had me going for a minute, though. Turns out they're actually 17. And, I still don't really like it, but at least it could have been worse. So yeah, Elle goes out to go do some art in the woods for the first time, and she happens upon the twins. She peeks through the bushes and she sees them skinny dipping in the lake. Just the two of them, and they're both completely nude, playing in the lake. So I'm gonna be like, that's weird. They're 17. Like, they're not like little babies. Like, they're 17 years old and they're just like voluntarily going nude in the lake with each other. But she runs off. Later on in the book, after the twins and Elle have met and are talking more, she continues to see them in secret and telling her grandparents like that she's gonna go draw or whatever, but she's also hanging out with these two weirdos. I'm just gonna highlight the incest stuff because like that's what we're gonna do. So Mason, the male twin, is quoted saying when he sees her body for the first time, "She's got a body as nice as yours," he told her. Why the fuck are you comparing her body to your sister, your twin sister? Why the fuck is the first thing you think when you see a girl's body that you like and are sexually attracted to say, she has a body as nice as yours? Because that also tells you that, like, he has seen his sister's body and looks at it enough to know that it's a nice body, according to him. And then at another point, Claudine, the sister, puts her head on Mason's lap, and like sprawls out while they're hanging out. And like, I don't know about you guys, but even just like little shit like that, I'm like, siblings don't act like that. I don't know about you and your siblings, but I sure as hell am not laying on my brother's lap. Like, even just saying that made me want to throw the fuck up. I want to throw up. There's also just like a lot of sexualizing Elle, and like I said, she just freshly turned 15 years old, so like Claudine lets her borrow a swimsuit and says like, you look better, sexier in some of these than I do. And I just feel gross about that. At another point, Mason like touches the swimsuit, touches like her breast to touch the swimsuit in order to like see if it's dry yet, because Elle can't go back home with wet clothes. And basically Claudine and Mason are spending the summer trying to teach Elle how to be a normal teenager and like how not to fall into social traps and how not to be naive and stuff. So Claudine says, like, I saw the way you reacted when Mason touched your breast yesterday. You didn't know what to do. I'm not saying it was bad for him to do it. Far from that. But someone else, someone not as thoughtful as Mason, could easily take advantage of you. And whose fault would that be? So first thing, that was a weird thing to do. He shouldn't have, like, just touched her without asking first. I don't care if it's Mason or anyone, that was a weird thing to do. And it wouldn't have been her fault, even if they did. So, yeah. Anyway, another reason why the main reason that Elle's grandparents, like, see Elle as sinful is because she is a child of grape. Like, her mother was said to have been essayed, and then she's the result of that. And her mother didn't want her. She wanted to get an abortion, but when her mother came back home to her extremely religious grandparents, it was too late, and they kind of just locked her away in their house until she gave birth. And then instead of giving her away like her mom thought she would, her mom runs off, and instead the grandparents keep her and raise her under these horrible and abusive conditions. So yeah, another thing this book does is, like, talking about her mother's essay, there's a lot of victim blaming which is nice. I'm not saying that like it's wrong, because like if anything, this part's actually accurate. At least when it's coming from Elle's grandmother, like there are people who actually think this way, and I just think the way they handle it later on kind of ruins that, though. But they say like basically she was drugged and date essayed, and so they say like, you know, she kind of asked for it, and like if you hang out with those kind of people and like do sinful things, then what do you expect, kind of thing. Another highlight that Claudine says is that she was with Mason when he had his first orgasm. They don't go on to further explain that. There's like no more context behind that. Not that I want it, but I just wanted you to hear it too. Like, I don't even remember why she said that. She just like did. I feel like Claudine's like weirdly jealous and weird when it comes to Mason, and because like Elle and Mason have this budding romance, and so like maybe she just inserted that info to be like, yeah, I know Mason. I was with him when he had his first orgasm. I don't know. Elle meets Mason and Claudine's parents, and upon meeting her father, Claudine's father, Claudine comes out wearing a swimsuit, and her father walks up to her and slapped her playfully on the rear. This family is so fucking weird. That's weird. Your dad should not be slapping you in the ass. You should not be skinny dipping with your siblings. You should not be laying on your siblings' laps. You should not be with your fucking brother when he has his first orgasm. What? What?
Mason's blood.
And unlike other V.C. Andrews books where it's like the incest is taboo and weird, the reason I hate this so much is because it's not even written as though it's weird and taboo. Like the only inclination we get of it being like strange is that like Elle is so sheltered. She doesn't know any better. So she asks like Mason innocently, like, are siblings usually this close? And he just brushes it off, kind of being like, probably not. Yeah, like me, but like me and Claudine are like twins and we've been through a lot together. So like, but like that's the most we get from that. Again, when like Elle and Mason are being like more getting closer to each other, like Claudine says like, haha, I'm not jealous. I don't think I have to be jealous. And it's like, yeah, why would you have to be jealous? That's your fucking brother. Another incident is Claudine said something nice, and so Mason says, that's a nice thing to say, he told her, and he kissed her on the lips. She shook her hair and playfully pushed him back onto the blanket. He yelled and tackled her, gently lowering her onto the blanket before putting a handful of sand on her stomach. She screamed and threw some back at him. Then he turned away and came over to me. What is this? Like, that's literally the only note I left. It's like, what is this? Like, I can't stand it. And yeah, this is where Elle asks, like, are all brothers and sisters as close as you two are, or is it just because you're twins? Nuh-uh. No siblings are close like this. Why did he kiss her on the lips? Why are they like... It's really gross, and it's not... And they just, like, move on. They're joking around, talking about how Claudine's always, like, getting with, like, different guys and never settles, and Mason says, because she's always thinking there's someone better around the corner, when I tell her she's probably thinking of me, she usually throws whatever's available at me, like, ha 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 ha. She shouldn't be thinking of you. What? Like, do you think she's not settling with other guys because she just wants to be with her fucking brother? Is that what we're saying? Is that what we're saying now? Then later on, Elle, Claudine, and Mason go to meet Elle's father, the guy who, from what Elle knows, essayed her mother. So, I don't know why they wanted to go meet this guy, but they track him down, they meet him, and that's when he's like, the dad tells them, like, no, like, me and your mom were, like, kind of dating, not really, but we were, like, we had a casual thing, and then, like, one day she just disappeared and stopped answering my calls, supposedly, like, you know, when she got pregnant. So then, later, when Elle is detailing this to her grandpa, he nods and says, like, I never believed your mother's story. I don't think your grandmother really believed it either, but it was easier to accept and go on. So, like, I don't know how I feel about them, like, not believing her mother and then being right about not believing her. Because, like, it is a thing, like, when it comes to, like, certain essay, like, some of it's played off like, you know, like, it's not as bad or, like, as others, or, like, it's not as valid. And so, like, a lot of the times with, like, date essay, especially, like, people don't really see it as, like, serious. So I don't know, the fact that, like, the route they took for the story, instead of like Elle just coming to terms, like, with, like, who she is, and, like, it doesn't matter who her parents are, she's not a bad or evil person because it doesn't matter who her parents are, like, she's herself, and, like, she's a good person, and that's all that matters. Instead, they go with the route of tracking down her rapist father, and then, oh, it turns out he actually wasn't a rapist. It turns out that that the mother was lying after all, confirming the grandparents' beliefs because they never believed their mother. And, like, throughout the book, Elle talks about how, like, when she meets her mother, they talk about, you know, when she came home pregnant and she was locked away and forced to deliver the baby and stuff, how her grandparents were not there for her mother. They didn't believe her. They, like, maybe her mom came back to her parents for comfort and for solace after being supposedly essayed. But then their beliefs are only later on confirmed that no, her mother is just a bad person. She lied about it, and that they were right to not believe her and to victim blame her. Is that the message we're trying to send? Is that, like, you shouldn't believe victims? It was not done very well. But I doubt that Andrew Niederman was thinking about the overall, or the overarching message and theme of this book, because much like all the other books, like, it's just another one that he has to shit out. Like, I doubt he's putting much thought or effort into any of these books. Like, how do you write almost like 100 books? It's crazy. There's no way he's putting the time, effort, and consideration he needs to into these topics, because, like, he's just shitting out so many of them. And then we're supposed to believe that that this is for VC Andrews' legacy. No. Sorry if I got rambly there, but I just don't like how the topics in this book were handled, especially when the book ends with her grandmother having a stroke, and then basically she's in the hospital, so then it's just Elle and her grandfather, and things get a lot better, actually, because her grandmother did the bulk of the abusing and the, like, bad treatment on Elle, and her grandfather actually kind of just wants her to, like, live and be like a normal teenager. So he actually meets Claudine and Mason, and she gets to, like, be with them more and prepares to start public school even and stuff. But yeah, we don't address the weird situation with Claudine and Mason. Instead, Mason and Elle are together, and they're talking about how, like, they're gonna visit each other on weekends and blah blah blah. And so, like, why did we put that weird incest stuff? Like, are you kidding? Like, it was literally for no reason. Is it being normalized? Because, like I said, a lot of these books, even though they're not marketed as YA books, that's kind of their audience. Bulk of their audience is, like, or was at the time, teens, like, reading them and being like, ooh, this is so risque and scandalous. But, like, yeah, it happened to me too. I was probably, like, only 13 or 14 when I read this book, and although looking back, the only thing I did remember was, like, that the twins were, like, skinny dipping, and it was a little weird. I didn't see it as, like, necessarily wrong or bad. I was just like, that's kind of strange, like, comparing it to my own relationship with my siblings. Like, okay, no, that's not normal. We should not normalize fathers slapping their daughters' asses, or brothers kissing and touching your sister's boobies, and ew, I'm sorry, like, I'm gross, I'm yucked out even thinking about it and saying it. And that is what has become of VC Andrews' legacy that we speak of. If we go back to the beginning, Flowers in the Attic, the first book that VC Andrews published and that got popularized, it does contain the same or similar themes of, like, an abusive religious grandmother and turbulent families, children under duress, SA, incest. But in that book, it wasn't written as normal. It wasn't written as, like, okay. From the get-go, you knew it was wrong. The siblings knew it was wrong, and it was traumatic. The entire thing was traumatic, and after they escaped the attic, they couldn't just go back to being normal kids again. Like, like, their entire lives henceforth in the books after were affected by their few years in the attic and what they went through in there. This book doesn't do that. This book literally is just like adding random weird shit in it just for the sake of it, because that's what sells. Let's wrap this up. In conclusion, I don't think V.C. Andrews was necessarily a bad author. I know a lot of people actually describe her books as trashy. The majority of them are, at no fault of her own, really, because they weren't even written by her. But Virginia herself understood that her audience gravitated towards this genre, this formula that she had only just begun at the time. Her books are entertaining, they can be thrilling and heart-wrenching at times, and goddamn it if they don't make good Lifetime movies.
I'm sorry, but there's been an accident.
But something about seeing V.C. Andrews' name being used to just shit out a constant onslaught of trashy fiction for the past 2 decades makes me a little bit sad. Her legacy, I think, will always be with Flowers in the Attic and the Dollenganger series for the most part, but I think it's difficult to ignore the other 90 books that cloud what remains of her original writing. I can only theorize what went on behind the scenes, but, and for all we know, this is what she wanted. That's information we just might never know. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. What we do know is that there was certainly a great incentive for Niederman and the publishing agency to continue to use Andrews' name, and it wasn't about her legacy. Niederman and Simon & Schuster, the publishing agency, have profited hundreds and thousands, maybe millions, off of her namesake, even after the IRS sought to sue the estate, claiming that V.C. Andrews' name should have been an asset that the family paid taxes on. Because, yeah, at this point, V.C. Andrews' name is not just, like, an author publishing books. It's, like, it's an asset. Like, they're using her name to make money off of it, and the IRS was like, taxes, please. I can't speak for Niederman as an author, either. The only text I've read of his was The Unwelcomed Child, under the pretenses that it was a V.C. Andrews book. It had its faults and can certainly be seen as forgettable amongst the catalog of Andrews' series that we only scraped the surface of today. But it will authentically always be my introduction into the vast world of V.C. Andrews, the author who continues to publish books 40 years after her death. Andrew Niederman is now 83 years old and has another book being released this year in October. So it's safe to say that as long as there's an Andrew Niederman, there will be V.C. Andrews books.